This week has felt a little bit like deja vu and also something radically different, and it's only Tuesday. So Trump officially declared the war with Iran back on, even though it never ended. He's threatening to blow up a whole mountain and may or may not be planning to charge ships to go through the Strait of Hormuz, which would upset 80 years of the world order. And then there's more news out of the Senate after Senator Lindsey Graham died over the weekend, leaving Republicans to now scramble to find someone to replace him in that race. His sister is going to fill his seat in the meantime, which is weird. And then Mitch McConnell sent out proof of life. I'm going to get into whether it's real or not. Oh, and Congress goes on summer break in a week. So, yeah. It's Tuesday, July 14th, 2026. Welcome to Make It Make Sense. I'm Grant Hermes. Last week I talked about how Trump said the ceasefire with Iran was over while he was in Europe. This week, he formally told Congress he was, quote, restarting hostilities with Iran under a new military operation called Guardian of Hormuz. He's calling it that because Iran had shut down the strait and had been attacking ships that weren't traveling through their side of the strait, and then we'd been firing on ships that weren't traveling on our side of the strait, which is really Oman's side of the strait. And if you're asking yourself right now, how can the president restart hostilities if we were already shooting at ships? That is a fantastic question. You see, the White House is trying to say right now that back in May, when Trump told Congress that Operation Epic Fury was over, it was because Iran and the U.S. had agreed to a ceasefire, the first of many before anything was actually signed. That was the end of the War Powers Declaration in Iran. And now, under Guardian of Hormuz, Trump gets a set of new war powers, except, and as you might have guessed, that's not how this works. As a quick refresher, the War Powers Resolution Act was put into place in 1973, and what it says is the president can use military force when the circumstances clearly show the need to use the military is imminent. Generally, that means as a defensive strike, although when you talk about something like a preemptive strike because we have intelligence that a country is going to attack us, or like a U.S. military base or maybe even an ally, that all gets a little muddy. We don't have to get into that here. But the president only gets to carry out that military operation for 60 days with a 30-day withdrawal period before Congress has to either declare war or authorize the use of military force in a limited way. Neither of those things happened during Operation Epic Fury, and most legal, military, and constitutional scholars agree there was no real imminent circumstance from Iran to go to war with them in the first place, so the initial war powers used by Trump were likely illegal. That aside, importantly for us right now, the War Powers Resolution Act isn't tied to a specific operation, but hostilities and military deployment. And that means that in Iran, the war powers clock doesn't get to restart because Trump rebranded the war. Those same war powers experts that I talked to about this told me that we never really stopped firing at Iran, not really. And we never really removed military assets from the Strait of Hormuz, so there was never a real withdrawal from what's called the theater of war, the fighting or where it's taking place. A ceasefire doesn't become a ceasefire just because you keep jumping up and down and shouting about it. There aren't two separate wars in Iran going on. It's just one big long one, no matter what the president wants to call them. That means the hostilities never actually ended from the first War Powers Declaration, meaning we are way past the 90-day deadline, and since the fighting never stopped, the second War Powers Declaration to restart them can't exist. It makes both of them illegal. Now, the only way forward here legally is if Congress steps in and either stops the president with a war powers resolution of their own, which would rein in his power to run the military, or if they agree to use an authorized use of military force, or an AUMF, which is what you'll hear it be called, something we haven't done in 25 years since the war in Iraq. Both the House and the Senate have already passed versions of a resolution to rein in Trump in Iran. That happened a few weeks ago, but because the Senate can be weird, they needed to vote to have a vote on it. But in between that vote and the real one, Trump marched to Capitol Hill and yelled at a bunch of Republicans who then changed their minds on the actual vote. So They just chose to let him keep bombing Iran without legal authority or oversight. On Monday, California Democratic Senator Adam Schiff put up a new powers resolution in the Senate to stop Trump. We'll see if that goes anywhere. The Senate goes on summer break in 3 weeks, probably less. The House goes on break in 6 days. And unless a bunch of folks over there get really squirrely about this real quick, it's going to be the summer of war in Iran. And as a quick reminder, we were promised this war was going to take at the most 30 days when it started. That 30 days was up 106 days ago. Also, in escalating this new phase of the war, Trump promised to start charging a 20% toll on ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz, the trade route where 20% of global oil flows, and tens of billions of dollars in other goods and materials that we need also get shipped through there. He promised on Truth Social the U.S. would get that money back. I mean, it wouldn't go into your pocket or mine. This war is costing us $1 billion a day, so we're running up a pretty big tab here. But the thing is, charging a toll for the strait, and specifically the U.S. doing it, is a bad idea. Secretary of State Marco Rubio even said so 3 weeks ago.
Well, that's the law. It's an international waterway. No country is allowed to charge tolls or fees on an international waterway. That's existing international law. That's the way it is in international waterways all over the world, and that's the way we expect it'll be here. So I don't think we have anybody to convince around here in that regard. I think all the countries in this region would agree with us.
He's right, and there's a reason for that. And I will be honest, I am heartlessly stealing this explanation from friend of the show, Eric Zuleger, over at the Under Report. But since World War II, the U.S. has been the protectors and guarantors of open shipping lanes worldwide, meaning our Navy guarantees the safety of cargo ships as long as they use the dollar when they do business. But if we start charging tolls, there's no guarantee anymore to free, safe shipping. So then what's to stop, say, the British from charging a toll at the English Channel and forcing companies to pay in pounds, or Singapore to start charging at the much more important strait, the Malacca Strait, except they start charging in maybe Chinese yuan, and the same with the Panama Canal, and then all of a sudden it's China's currency that's on the rise, and the U.S. economy sinks as the dollar gets weaker, inflation goes up here, we slide into a recession at home. Abroad, we're back in the 1800s fighting naval wars over shipping lanes, except this time, we have submarines with nuclear missiles on them. It's the domino effect that every president before Trump has looked at when it's come to a war with Iran, and a prime reason why they've all said no until now. The good news, which is not something I say very often on this show, is that Trump did a 180 in less than 24 hours. He posted again on Truth Social that he'd talked to some of our Middle Eastern allies, the same ones who'd been giving his crypto company hundreds of millions of dollars and gave him a shiny new jet, while also getting bombed left and right during this war, that they didn't want to pay a toll on their cargo. So they talked to him and talked him down from this 20% idea, and he's decided not to do it for now. What he is apparently still threatening to go ahead with is to level the Iranian mountain complex called Pickaxe Mountain. Pickaxe Mountain is a well-known underground stronghold for the Iranians that is believed to have some of Iran's nuclear stockpile and part of their program. Here's what Trump said on the conservative radio show with Hugh Hewitt about it.
With Space Force and everything else, we have a lot of eyes on it. But Pickaxe is a possible target for a nice big fat shot right into the front door. And I think that maybe you'll see that. I'll tell him right now, look.
Yeah, the thing is, Pickaxe Mountain is a mountain. The tunnels beneath it are estimated to be between 300 and 2,000 feet below solid granite. The U.S. does not currently have a bomb or a missile that could hit anything inside the mountain short of a nuclear weapon that would need to be large enough to level it. I don't know how big that would actually be, but the force to blow up a mountain like that would be something similar to the eruption of Mount St. Helens in Montana in 1980, which was the equivalent of 26 megatons of TNT, or 1,600 times the size of the nuclear bomb that we dropped on Hiroshima. I don't know if the president is actively threatening to use a nuke again. If he is, it's the fourth time he's done it since February. If he's not, Iran likely knows this is a bluff because the U.S. doesn't have the bombs to do what Trump is saying, and because we are so low on munitions, we don't have a lot to spare on a bombing run that would amount in the end to a very expensive pyrotechnics show. But for now, the U.S. is going to continue escalating our attacks in Iran. Supposedly, talks with Iran are still on, and that deal to make a peace deal is still in place that we signed last month. But yesterday, Iran said they'd back out if the U.S. didn't hold up our end of the bargain, which in this moment, we very much aren't. Okay, let's take a quick break, and when I come back, more chaos over in the Senate. You know how every social media platform is basically engineered to make you angry and keep you scrolling? That's not an accident. Outrage performs better than nuance, so the algorithm feeds you outrage. I see it every day as someone making news content for a living. The loudest, most biased takes get the reach. The careful, fact-driven stuff like I do my best to bring you here gets buried. That's why I joined SaySo. It's a brand new news app just launched, built by a group of former journalists and engineers who asked, what if we build news from scratch for people who actually want to be informed instead of people who just want to keep scrolling? No algorithm optimizing for outrage, no AI slop, just vetted creators delivering fact-driven coverage, curated so you can know what's going on in 5 minutes and then get on with your day. If you're the kind of person who is intentional about your sleep, your workouts, your work, what you eat, but your news diet is just whatever your feed throws at you, this is for you. The same energy finally applied to how you stay informed. I'm one of the first creators on SaySo, and my favorite feature is that I can link my sources right in the video. That way, you know how I'm telling you the truth. And if you sign up now, you'll be one of the first users to join. You can download SaySo. The link is in the show notes and the description. Go check it out and be as smart as you know you are. All right, let's get back to the show. On Sunday morning around 2 a.m., the office of South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham said the senator had been found unconscious at his home in D.C. and had died. We later found out it was from what's called an aortic dissection, from the hardening of his arteries around his heart due to cardiovascular disease. Lindsey Graham was 71 years old. His legacy as a politician will be one as a foreign policy expert, but also a senator who did not know a war he wouldn't support. He will also be remembered as a politician who was called a chaos monster by his colleagues. He never really had any closely held beliefs other than the pursuit of power within his own party. He doubled back on almost every principle he ever staked out, and at the end of his life, he even did it with Trump. Despite publicly and privately knowing the kind of man and leader Trump would be. Here's Graham in 2016, and then after January 6th.
Well, I want to talk to the Trump supporters for a minute. I don't know who you are, and I don't know why you like this guy. I think what you like about him, he appears to be strong when the rest of us are weak. He's a very successful businessman, and he's going to make everything great. He's going to take all the problems of the world and put them in a box and make your life better. That's what he's selling. Here's what you're buying. He's a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot. He doesn't represent my party. He doesn't represent the values that the men and women who wear the uniform are fighting for. I've been in the Air Force for 33 years. I retired this June. Trump and I, we've had a hell of a journey. I hate it being this way. Oh my God, I hate it. From my point of view, he's been a consequential president. But today, first thing you'll see. All I can say is count me out. Enough is enough. I've tried to be helpful. But fraud. They said there's 66,000 people in Georgia under 18 voted. How many people believe that? I asked, give me 10. I hadn't had one. They said 8,000 felons in prison in Arizona voted. Give me 10. I hadn't gotten one. Does that say there's problems in every election? I don't buy this. Enough's enough. We got to end it.
And here's Lindsey Graham just a few weeks ago after he won his primary, putting Trump just a close second to God.
I want to start with a bunch of thank yous. I want to thank the big guy, God. Trump comes later. Mr. President, you're not far behind God, but we're going to start with him.
Lindsey Graham became Trump's Renfeld, his toady. And for that, this is the praise that Trump gave him after learning about his death.
Now, he had one bad moment, and that was, in the January 6th thing when he stood up. All right, now I've had it. That's it. I can't do it anymore. And then he called me like about 40 minutes later, and he said, did I really say that? I can't believe it. And he took it back, so I give him a 99 instead of a 100, And he called me, and which didn't surprise me at all. And he said, I'm back, and told me a couple of things. He was very strong on fighting for the Save America Act. And I'm not sure if he was at the beginning, but he really became the primary advocate for it. And I think he would have felt the same way about terminating the filibuster, which was so important. I mean, it's so important, the Republicans.
The president scoring a man's life for how loyal he was to him after he's died. And man, those hosts are fighting for their lives to get Trump to describe Graham as anything other than a cog in his machine to get this latest bill passed. So for all his simpering loyalty to Trump, Graham was just another useful tool in his box. And I think there is a deep sadness to that. There are also real electoral implications to Graham's death. First, the governor of South Carolina needed to appoint someone to fill his seat until January 3rd, when Graham's term officially runs out. The entire political world expected that to be South Carolina's lieutenant governor, until Trump said it should be Lindsey Graham's sister, who had been at Graham's side his entire life after their parents had died, and Graham became her legal guardian when he was 22 and she was 13. Now, she isn't new to government, but this is a much bigger role than she has now. She's a commissioner on the South Carolina Commission for the Blind. She's on the state's Workforce Development Board and the president-elect for the National Commission for States Agencies for the Blind. It is not that the work of those organizations isn't important, but they're kind of political vanity jobs. They're pretty low stakes. Again, not to dismiss helping blind people or people out of work. It's just they're like one step above a no-show government job. But she was sworn in today and will take her brother's seat for the next 6 months, in which she will have to vote on the next attorney general and potentially federal judges and maybe even a Supreme Court justice. In the meantime, Republicans are scrambling to find someone to run for office in Graham's place. He was up for re-election, had won the primary, and was only 3 points ahead of his Democratic challenger in the latest polling. There are a few names on the list that could jump into this race. First is the Lieutenant Governor, Pamela Yvette. She was originally endorsed by Trump in the race for governor until she lost the primary, and then he switched to the winner at the last second, which was weird. But by not appointing her to be the stand-in until January, it does free her up to run. Now, the governor himself, Henry McMaster, could also run. He terms out in January, so he could hop in the race here. Neither have said they're exploring a campaign with less than 120 days to go, though. Then there are the members of Congress. Representative Nancy Mace has said she is thinking about running. She's not running again for re-election, except she did just come in 5th place in the Republican primary for governor, so putting her back on a statewide ticket might not be a great idea. Representative Ralph Norman has already asked for Trump's endorsement to replace Graham, and Trump said give him a week, which, ouch. Instead, Trump turned around and said he liked Representative Russell Fry. He called him outstanding and someone you could watch out for, and then said, but I'm sure there are other people in the race too. So we'll see what happens, but it's now a race that neither party thought was really going to be up for grabs, and it is very much now, and could hand control of the Senate over to Democrats in November if Republicans pick the wrong candidate to fill Graham's shoes. Last on the show today, Mitch McConnell is alive. And I say that definitively, despite what you're seeing rumored online, because that is a bunch of unsupported nonsense. On Sunday, after nearly a month of being in the hospital without releasing a single statement, Mitch McConnell's office posted a photo of him in a hospital rehab facility chair, a button-down shirt, and jeans, with a newspaper on one side and his wife Elaine Chao on the other side. Both had big smiles. Mitch did not show any sign of bruising on his face. McConnell's office said that on June 14th, McConnell fell, which we know from 911 calls he was found unconscious and in cardiac arrest because paramedics were doing CPR initially, before he was then taken to the hospital, where his office then said he developed a mild case of pneumonia. I have done videos on social media about this, so if you already follow me, this is going to be a second helping of this. And if you don't follow me, rude, but also please hold your questions until the end. First, we're going to start with the claim that McConnell fell and contracted pneumonia. He's long been unsteady on his feet and certainly has since February when he got the flu and has been in and out of a wheelchair around the Capitol since then. How are we supposed to believe that a guy in a wheelchair at the Capitol was up and walking in his home? Because that's how some people who need wheelchairs use them. It's entirely possible that at his Washington home, McConnell has had railings installed, has strategically placed furniture to lean on as he gets around, and maybe he actually is capable of walking short distances, just not the long halls of the Capitol. That is not uncommon at all. Because McConnell has had a severe case of the flu earlier this year, and after a fall and some kind of cardiac arrest, he was likely on oxygen, those things combined, plus his age, are factors for a condition called hospital-acquired pneumonia. It's common among the elderly, people with weakened immune and pulmonary systems, so weaker lungs, and McConnell would fit that bill. And then there's the fact that he's in jeans and a button-down. A lot of people out there have said there's no hospital or rehab wing in the world that would let him wear that. Maybe. But also, it's just as likely that in this staged photo by his communications team, maybe for the 20 minutes it took to get this shot, they dressed him up, and then he got back in the gown and grippy socks. I don't know. People say he also looks 10 years younger in this photo, and that if he was so sick, he wouldn't look that way. For starters, he's been in bed rest for like a month, likely being pumped full of fluids and medication, which I think is probably the equivalent of a med spa getaway for an 84-year-old. Also, his face here doesn't really look all that different from his recent pictures. Sure, there's some color change on his hair from lighting and shadow changes, and depending on the kind of lens on the camera that you're looking at on any given picture, the way a face shape looks can also change fairly dramatically. There's a real part 2 to that I'll get to in a minute as well. Now, those things are just me and you going point for point, right? Let's get some proof. I ran this photo through multiple reverse image searches across different programs. It doesn't come up anywhere else online. The online rumor is that this is a photo from 2023. That doesn't work here. I ran this through multiple AI generation detectors and got back that this photo was not generated by AI, but there was evidence of either AI editing or specifically AI smoothing. It's hard to know exactly what that means, but it could easily be some smoothing on McConnell's face or some color correction to hide bruising, or maybe just adjust the photo because the lighting wasn't great. The paper McConnell is holding is the sports page from the Washington Post from July 12th, the day the office released this photo showing the Washington Nationals' new draft pick from Texas A&M. Photos circulating around online of the text on that paper that showed that the text is a bunch of nonsense are also nonsense themselves. When you enhance an image of text through an AI algorithm, that algorithm isn't reading the text. It's just filling in pixels based on similar shaped letters, so V's and W's might get mixed up, K's and Y's, O's and Q's, forget about it. And yeah, some new, more advanced AI generators do pick up what's called text data, but they're not comprehending language the way a human brain does, so it's just not reliable. There are also plenty of people out there who say that this thing could easily have been photoshopped, except it wasn't. I ran this photo through multiple error level analysis detectors, which show you different levels of compression within a single image. So if you combine two images together, their underlying compression is going to be different. None of that is in the McConnell photo. Not his clothes, his wife, the newspaper, his face, none of it. It is a uniform ELA across the entire thing. The Washington Post also got a hold of the metadata of the original photo and had a forensic photographer look at the picture too. The metadata, so the underlying data about the picture itself, shows that it was taken on July 12th, the same day it was posted, and the expert also said the image is real. On top of that, in order to pull off a conspiracy in which McConnell is either dead, brain dead, or so sick that this photo had to be fabricated, a lot of things from what I just told you that don't talk to one another would have had to break down. Doctors and nurses would need to put their careers at risk to be part of a cover-up, even if HIPAA laws prohibit them from talking about a patient after they're dead for 50 years. Staffers who need jobs would have to be okay with not looking for new ones in highly competitive Washington, D.C. to be part of this cover-up, even if they knew that the Republican Party would be good to them for being loyal to McConnell. We're talking about a conspiracy that is stretching toward 100 people, and that is just too big. As a rule of journalism, as a reporter, I tend to abide by this idea that's along the lines of don't believe a conspiracy when entropy is just as likely. And what I mean by that is don't fall for the trap of conspiracies that things happen for a reason and that there is always somebody moving behind the shadows unless you can prove it. Otherwise, shit happens. And more often than not, people are people and no one is driving the bus. Now, that is not to say that this photo alone is enough proof to say that Mitch McConnell is healthy enough to return to work, and that Kentuckians and the governor of Kentucky shouldn't actively be exploring the option of a special election to replace Mitch McConnell and force him to resign and step down. I think that conversation still needs to happen. I think that if Mitch McConnell looks this good in a photo, he is good enough to meet face-to-face with the governor of Kentucky so that the governor can know that the people of his state are going to be properly served by Mitch McConnell until January. The deadline for a special election because of logistics and some legal challenges here is August 3rd. I would not put it past Mitch McConnell to try to bend the rules and run down the clock till that August 3rd date to deny even a possibility of a Democrat winning a seat, even temporarily, to January. That's on the table here. Mitch McConnell blocked a Supreme Court nomination, breaking a whole bunch of Senate rules for 293 days, before then ramming another one through in an election year in just a few weeks. I would not put that past him. But what I am saying here is that this image is real and the conspiracies behind it are not. Okay, that is it for today's show. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the Make It Make Sense Substack, where this week's Things You Forgot from Civics class is all about how political parties work. And given the fact that both parties right now are scrambling to replace candidates in different major Senate races, it's a good time to understand how these parties operate and what the role of the party really is and where you as the voter actually fit into it. And if you want access to that, the Make It Make Nonsense culture essays, the weekly reporting, and the entire backlog of Make It Make Sense podcast episodes, become a paid subscriber. It costs less than what you spend on coffee a month, I promise. And you can sign up for free right now if you just want to taste test your way in. I think you'll like what you find there. And as always, share the show on social media. I am at Grant Hermes on Twitter, Blue Sky, the SaySo News app, and at Grant_Hermes on everything else. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Grant Hermes, and I'll talk to you next time.